Well, welcome back to the Common Sense Medicine Podcast with your host, Dr. Timothy Chen, and I'm your co-host, Michael Abernathy. And today we're going to be talking about, or we're going to be continuing our series on weight loss, the Foundation series. We've been through part one, talking about the biological science behind weight loss, what's going on there, how to, we helped put together a framework for both diet and exercise, and that kind of allows for flexibility, but lets you know what matters, what doesn't, and where you should focus. And today we're moving into kind of the behavioral and psychological aspects of weight loss.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, again, we started with the science part because I think most people need to understand, with all the confusion out there, that in its basic core of weight loss, it's still energy in and energy out. And I think a lot of the people that are listening were really, they liked it. They appreciated it. They learned a lot, even sleep and how much that affects it.
Yeah.
But now I think we're getting to where the rubber meets the road, right? Which is what most people struggle with.
And that's because I remember maybe it was the first episode I said, I like to know how things work, and then I can understand how to, move forward. And so all of part one was based, it was just specifically laying the foundations, putting the groundwork there so that what you need to do to see weight loss happen. But that doesn't mean that that's all of it. So now, like you said, rubber hits the road. We're going to be figuring out what we need to do in addition to all that. How do we make those changes and kind of design our path forward? The way that I kind of came up with an analogy for that is part one is building the vehicle, and part two is helping you build the road and drive to the end, the finish line.
I like it. I like that analogy. Well, and again, so I think we mentioned this in one of the past episodes. So again, if you haven't listened to the first ones, you should listen to them to get the idea.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole series is designed to listen to in order. So if you're joining us for the first time, thank you, number one. But if you are here for the first time, it would be beneficial and helpful for you to go back to episode one of the Foundation series and listen to all of those, because we are probably going to make references to some of those things. And if you aren't sure what we're talking about, all that information is in those prior episodes.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think with weight loss, it's a multi-bajillion-dollar industry. Everybody is.
I don't know if it's that big. It's definitely in the billions.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and again, I think everybody's trying to find strategies. There's new supplements. There's weight loss. There's so many strategies with eating. But what I think we mentioned last time was most people, if they do it, they will lose weight. But if you look at it, which is again what we're trying to do, is we want sustained weight loss, right? We don't need these yo-yos, because I think that's what everyone's frustrated with. They'll lose, they'll gain, they'll lose, they'll gain. The statistics actually aren't usually in the favor of people who are trying to have sustained weight loss.
Right. Yeah. So it's less than 5% of people who successfully lose weight, or we won't say that. We'll say less than 5% of people who lose weight successfully keep it off for good.
Yeah.
And so that's the whole point of today's episode, is we're going to look at what those 5%ers typically do. What are some behaviors that they typically engage in, or what are some, traits of how they, do things? What are some character things?
Yeah. So we're going to be 5%ers today.
We're going to try.
That's right.
Well, that's what we're working for.
Yeah.
But I want to start with talking about changing for good. And, we're talking about behavioral change, lifestyle modification, all of the psychology that goes into it. And there's a lot there. But when we're talking about changing for good, we're not talking about doing something temporary and then, expecting that to fix everything and then not having to do the long-term work. So it's, when we diagnose someone with diabetes, we don't put them on medication or insulin for a month and then their numbers improve and then we just take them off. Because if we do that, their number is going to come right back, right? So, there are some lifestyle things that they could work on to help, but in a lot of cases, it's a chronic condition that's going to be treated as a chronic condition, not a temporary thing, in a lot of the cases.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, obesity is kind of in that exact same realm, right?
Right.
You did things to get to this size. You want to reduce that. You have to change what you're doing. And if you revert back to what you're doing, you're going to go back to the initial condition. So again, nothing we're saying sounds, out there, out on left field, but it is, again, something that we all struggle with.
Yeah, and so when we're treating obesity through lifestyle and behavioral change, we're going to treat it like a chronic condition where the things that we put in place need to be sustainable and things that you can do long term because they're going to be required. Because a lot of the challenges, especially on the physiological side, a lot of the challenges that people face are biologically ingrained in us. That's our default way. And so we've been living with those for so long and they're kind of the habits, and we have to undo those, because if we don't, we're going to go back towards our nature and, relapse into where we were.
Yeah. Okay. So again, that's our view, and again, what we're talking about is, like you said before, Michael, not 3 months, not 6 months. We're looking at 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, because at the end of the day, we always talk about, we want people to live a long time. We want good quality of life as well.
Right.
And so we're extrapolating into the future, which sometimes is hard to do. We as human beings like to look, next week, next month. But if we really want long-term, high-quality life, we need to do daily changes that are sustainable.
Yep. And sustainability is, if you remember from part one, it was the number 2 most important thing. But you could consider it number 1 because eventually you're going to not require the caloric deficit anymore. Once you've lost the weight, you don't require the caloric deficit. So sustainability becomes number 1. So whatever it is that you're doing, whatever strategies you use, and it's going to be a very individualized approach because everybody's wrestling with different things, and everybody has a different starting point or different reference points. And so when we're putting together strategies, one person's strategy and their journey is going to look significantly different from somebody else's. Now, they may use implement similar strategies or some similar techniques, but the big picture stuff, it's all going to be individualized. And so, yeah, we need to figure out what works best for you, what can you stick to, and even if that requires a slower pace, the sustainability is going to win in the end.
Yeah,
time. It's always going to win in the end.
Yeah. All right. Well, then, Michael, let's dive in. What are these people doing?
All right. So the first thing is that they are able to apply cognitive restraint in some form or another. So that's the ability to intentionally exert mental energy to reduce caloric intake, control portion sizes, or make choices that you otherwise wouldn't in pursuit of better health. And so another word that you can use for cognitive restraint is willpower. And we have a full episode planned for willpower, discipline, all of that. And so, but that's something that people that are successful have not more of than other people, but they're able to, I guess, maximize their efficiency with their willpower to put changes in place that stick.
Interesting. Well, again, I think every time I hear that, it's so interesting, because I often ask patients, they'll be like, well, I've done everything I've done to lose weight or whatever, but it's not working. And when you start asking them even just a little bit more questions, you realize actually they really haven't done almost anything. And so the idea of, we have to do something that is against our nature, right, a little bit counter, right? And number 2, it's not going to be easy to do, but you have to be honest with yourself as well of what you actually have done, right? And so if you're like, I've done everything I can to lose weight, and then you touch how much alcohol do you drink? I drink a 6-pack every day. Then obviously we are not doing a whole lot of anything. And so anyway, I thought that was interesting. That's usually the first point, is they realize there's a problem. They've got to do something about it. And it's against their nature to do it, but they have to almost will their body to keep it.
So you haven't seen the notes for the next episode for next week, but yeah, all of that is essentially in next week's episode, which is going to be great. But yeah, no, that's true. So the thing to remember about willpower, just a short little refresher, because we've talked about this, is that it's finite. You do not have an endless pool of willpower and discipline, and so what successful dieters do, or people that are successful with weight loss, is they, like I said, they maximize their efficiency, which means they use it as little as possible. And that's where the environmental design comes in. That's where the changes that require the smallest amounts of willpower come into play, because eventually you're just gonna run out. And diets that require maximum amounts of willpower will fail 100% of the time. 100% of the time, excuse me.
Wow. Okay. Is it number 2, number 3? Is that what they do, or?
No, that's we're still on the cognitive restraint.
Okay.
So it's just, we set up the hierarchy of prioritization for diet in part 1 to kind of cover the frame, right? We got the framework, but we left it open so that it can be very, very flexible from one person to the next. And so whatever that looks like for you, it might be drastically different, but the goal is to find a flexible point, a balance that can help you reach your goals without requiring the just absolute most effort. So we want to make it easy. And that's one of the goals for behavioral change, is to just make it easy.
Yeah.
So make it easy to do the good things and make it difficult to do the hard things or the bad things.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think this is a crucial spot, because I'll have patients come in and they'll feel guilty that their change is so small. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, well, all I did was just one thing. It wasn't very much, but the part of the key of sustainability is like you said, your willpower is limited. It's not an unending amount of cash. And so the more money you have to keep spending, you're going to run out of money. Right. So if it was small amounts, but it's consistent, your body actually can adapt to that better. And again, adjust the environment. We'll probably touch that one again later too, but that just makes so much sense. To make it as easy for you to make the right choice is always the best thing to do.
Right. And the reason you want to do that is because life is not always easy. Life just like we said, life doesn't care about your goals.
Right.
And you'll get a curveball thrown at you. And if your whole strategy requires 100% focus, 100% effort, anything that kind of happens to distract you and cause you to have to shift focus is going to make the whole thing fall apart. You know what I mean? So things need to be easy so that if life throws you a curveball, it's not going to just, the house isn't going to crumble. So, all right. Number 2 is self-monitoring in some form. And so that just means keeping track of some aspect of your efforts, strategies, and results. And so that could be tracking your calories, your macros, tracking your body weight, taking body measurements, getting the body fat percentage checked. It could be any of those things. And we do have a full episode planned for that too. So we're not going to go into too much detail with tracking, but that's self-monitoring in some form or fashion, is part of the feedback loop necessary to know how we're doing. And just raising awareness by keeping track of things can, number 1, keep it in the front of your mind, and number 2, motivate you to keep going. And it also allows you, if things aren't working the way that you think that they should, then you say, okay, let me take a step back, look at what I've been doing, what results did I expect, and what can I do differently to maybe see the results next time, right? So self-monitoring, tracking is a way that you can do that.
That's awesome. Well, and with you, Michael, with your weight loss journey, did you have a lot of self-tracking and things like that too?
From time to time, yes, I did the MyFitnessPal and nutrition tracking. And so I do that now way more diligently than I did in the past when I was losing weight. And this is something that may resonate with a lot of people when I say this, but for me, I didn't know what I was doing when I was losing weight. And so I didn't understand all of the psychological challenges and kind of how to overcome them. I just kind of went and did my best and just stuck with it. And it changed. I changed what I was doing from time to time based on what my needs were or where my life was. But it was just kind of a matter of being consistent with the little things. But for tracking, when I was losing weight, I didn't like it. I hated it. I could do it for a few weeks, but after a while, I felt like it was just a journal that I was keeping of all of my failures. And it was very demotivating. And I know that probably resonates. That hits home with some people. 'Cause it, when you're tracking and things are going great, you feel great about it. But if you make a mistake and you eat something terrible, you run into one of two situations. Number one is that you don't want to track it because you don't want to put that on your app, because then you're going to feel guilty about it, which then defeats the purpose, because now you're not being honest with yourself or honest about your efforts. The other one is putting it down there and then still feeling guilty about it. So either way you go, you're gonna, if you're overly concerned about making mistakes and breaking the perfection, you're gonna be upset whether you track it or not. So you might as well track it.
Right.
But the bigger point is to, keep track of it and move on and understand that one thing that you did that you consider a failure doesn't matter in the long run. As long as you continually do, the right things. We're not aiming for 100% here. We're aiming for like 85%.
Right.
80%. A B, well, you can graduate from college with a B average,
That's
C
right.
average.
Yeah.
We're not trying to be straight A students,
Yeah.
That's not what it's about.
Right. Well, and again, I think this is helpful for the people who are, again, we're talking about these 5%ers that are able to lose weight and keep it and continue, or, sleep better and keep it, or start a new workout and keep it. What they're doing is they are being honest with where they are, right? Which is so crucial, because even from a provider standpoint, it helps us when we know what's going on. Right. Because if you kind of half tell us things, we can't make this. We'll make a decision based on what we know, and it may be completely wrong because we only have half the information. And for yourself and for these people who are 5%ers, they are very honest with, hey, if I'm only walking 10 minutes a day, I'm not putting 30, because again, I need to improve, and so anyway, you're only accountable really to yourself. Like this whole thing for these 5%ers, no one's caring about, no one's looking at them. No one's looking at their journals like, oh, I can't believe you add that. What they're doing is they're just being accountable and honest with where they are so they can improve.
Yeah. And we could have a conversation about that, because that's something, it's a hard conversation to have, because, to a certain extent, there are external variables that cause your circumstances to be less than desirable, right? So not everybody is where they want to be in life. And, there are things that occur that are not your fault that kind of, contribute to where you are. And that's unfortunate. But when you think about what can I do, or what's going to happen that gets me out of this, or where do I want to go, nobody's coming to save you. You are going to be responsible for saving yourself. Now, other people can help you along the way, and they should. And we have a whole episode on the social aspect of it. But at the end of the day, whether or not your circumstances are 100%, your own fault, that doesn't matter. This is where we are. Where we need to go is going to be up to you. And you kind of have to be honest and accountable, and, forget about where we got, or, what got us here. How are we going to get to where we want to be?
Get out. Yeah.
So, and that's a hard conversation to have. It is. I had that conversation with myself, and it was tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good one. Okay. So moving on.
Awesome.
And we already talked about this one, but regular exercise. So of the 5% of people that lose weight and keep it off successfully, over 70% of them engage in regular exercise.
Yeah, I think that's a non-negotiable. I think we've mentioned that like in 14 different episodes on our podcast, just because of the size and effect of exercise. Not maybe so much on the calories itself, but I call it a keystone habit, which what I've seen is when people are regular with their exercise, other things usually fall in place. And again, for stability, for mood, right? For sleep, for like lifting groceries out of the car, all these things that affect quality of life, exercise is crucial in all of them.
Right. And when you work your body and you exercise, it gives you those endorphins, it improves your mood, and that improved mood, can directly tie into how successful you are with other things, like with your weight loss journey. So, A lot of it is how you think about things and how you frame things. And that'll be next episode.
Okay.
We talk a lot about mindset. That's what next episode is all about, is mindset.
Perfect.
So the next one is structured programs. And by structured programs, I don't mean downloading a diet plan or an exercise plan off the internet or out of a book and just doing that. Structured programs, I guess what I mean by that is talking with a coach or somebody else to help you put structure into your routine. Whatever it is that that you develop as your dieting or your exercise strategy, there needs to be some form of structure. And so you need to know what that's going to look like, and talking with a coach can really help remove a lot of that guesswork. And a lot of people are starting from nothing. They have no experience with the diet. They have no experience with exercise. And that's why we did all part one. But working with a coach can really help to, lay it out in a way that makes it work with you, that it's easy, and it takes that pressure off of you to develop and design everything. So you can focus on actually doing the stuff that you enjoy doing, and let, a dietitian handle your diet, and let a trainer handle your, exercise, or, whatever. But structured programs.
Yeah.
And that even coaches need coaching too.
Yeah.
Like I talk with a coach too. So I'm not perfect, and I tend to get caught in the weeds. And we were talking about this. I was talking about this with Tamika earlier, the perfectionism, holding back efforts because you get focused on details that don't really matter. And so talking with my coach really helps me iron out that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no. And again, I think that is, that's crucial. We've seen patients who either are in a large group train or exercise class, or they have hired a personal trainer that seem to do much better. Maybe it's the accountability piece. Maybe it's says, hey, right, they're designing things for you, they're tracking for you, and maybe you pay them, so you're like, well, might as well use it. But yeah.
There's definitely the accountability aspect, because you're talking with somebody that's helping you, and if you don't do the things that you told that person you're going to do, you're going to feel bad about it. That peer pressure is real. It works positively and negatively. You know, you're going to want to make that person happy. That's what we do. The group sessions, it's all about, the social aspect, getting yourself around other people that are going through the same things, or, working on improving their health in the same ways. It's helpful to be around other people that share those drives. So
perfect.
Next one is the ability to focus on long-term goals.
Okay.
And that's something that we are not good at.
We are not, no, not at all.
And I have a whole episode on that coming up. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one, because what you have to do is prioritize your long-term benefit over the present or immediate benefit. Because most of the time, anything that feels great now probably has negative ramifications down the road. And anything that is good for you down the road probably isn't the most comfortable thing now.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to make the sacrifice today for the better tomorrow. Because if we don't, we're just going to continue along the road that we're on.
Yeah, that sounds like the delayed gratification idea, which again, I think not only affects, lifestyle nutrition, but just in life in general. Like, it seems like people who are able to start a business, right? They have to be able to see in the future. And a lot of small businesses don't make it, but the ones that do, it almost seems like the one that's leading it can see the vision of where they're going, and therefore put in hard sacrifices and things like that, and have to, not have things now to be able to get what they want in the future. And again, we as human beings are not wired like that. We are usually wired for the here and now. Right.
And we did mention this, but the same biological drives that don't worry about future things. Because, I think we said this earlier, 50% of people back in the day died before 35 years old.
Yeah.
So future was not a thing that we even considered, when we were hunter-gatherers and whatnot. We were still, now was the only thing that mattered, because there was no guarantee for tomorrow. Like the world we live in now has us living into the 80s, which was it didn't exist
Right.
way back when. And so our brains developed at a time where, focusing on now is the most important thing. Don't worry about later, worry about now. And so we still have to deal with those structures and the way that that's designed, but it doesn't really help us. Same way as the food environment we're in doesn't help our bodies. But yeah.
Awesome.
And finally, social support. So having a social network, not social media, that is supportive and actively participates in the process has a significant impact on long-term success.
Yeah.
And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think we talked last time how this is pretty much like the CrossFit group, right? They're a big success. The workouts are fine. I mean, they do something crazy, but it's not so much the workout as it is the culture that they build, where everybody is kind of helping one another. They're keeping each other accountable. They kind of all end up eating the same thing and kind of doing the same thing, and they all get super healthy. It's that unique. And again, this is like what you said, not social media. This needs to be like in person. Like there's something different with in person and face to face, like true human connection versus like a Facebook Messenger person.
Yeah, and that's something I realized a few years ago. When it was during the pandemic, because we were all like stuck at home and everything was done virtually. And, on the internet, it's great because we can talk to people all over the world, and we have more, we know more people and have connections with more people than we've ever had. But like none of them really mean a whole lot.
Right.
It's just a bunch of, not deep connections. There's nothing deep there. And so I think, one of the biggest issues that came out of that was that people were not able to have those deeper, meaningful connections with other human beings in person. And I mean, the rates of mental health that we saw during COVID and coming out of COVID just through the roof.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it is we are supposed to be around other people and working towards, a higher purpose or whatever.
Yeah.
It's important. And but yeah, so I have a whole episode on that too, because it's crazy good. So today's episode is basically laying out what do the 5%ers do? And then in the following episodes, the coming weeks, we're going to be breaking each one of those things down, not exercise, because we've already done an exercise episode. But all those other things, we're going to be breaking those down, looking at the psychology and the behavioral health or behavioral change aspect of those things, and doing a little bit of deeper dive tomorrow or next week's episode. I'm looking forward to.
That's awesome.
But just a few more things that 5%ers do. From the diet standpoint, they basically follow the prescriptions that we laid out. They follow the framework that we did in part 1. So they're eating lower calorie foods, high protein, high fiber, flexible control of the diet rather than rigid controls, and they avoid the all or nothing approach. They don't snack a whole lot. They limit that. They limit their stress. They eat mindfully. They don't eat in response to stress or emotions. They don't stay up very late, and they get plenty of sleep. Here's a good one, and you mentioned this, satisfaction with results. So celebrating wins regardless of how big or small we think they are, recognizing a win for a win and celebrating it, and then letting that momentum roll into the next win. We typically are not good at that.
No.
And so people that can recognize wins and kind of see the positive side of things and use that momentum are more successful.
Yeah.
And so part of that, the mindfulness, the recognizing small wins, seeing the positive side of things, managing stress and not letting stress dictate your, behavior. There is a term that kind of rolls all that up into it called emotional intelligence. And so people that are successful tend to have higher levels of emotional intelligence. And so if you want to learn more about emotional intelligence, I can't recommend that book enough. I think it's by Daniel Goleman or Coleman. Something super good.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn more about that, check out that book. I'm a big reader, so I think I'm going to start recommending books from here on out because I am not a psychologist. I'm a dietitian, and so my education, although I do have, I did get some psychology and cognitive behavioral therapy education through my degree program. I'm not a psychologist. A lot of what I know is from books that I've read and just years of working with patients on behavioral change and personal experience. And so I'm going to recommend a lot of books.
I like it. Yeah.
If that's okay.
Yeah. No, I think, we should get sponsored. No, I'm kidding. But no, I think that'd be great because, this year I also took a focused effort into try to read more. And I usually Audible because that's how I learn. But there's so much things we can get from our time rather than doom scrolling.
Yeah.
And again, they're really, really helpful because sometimes it just sheds light on what we call my own blind spot, right? Like I didn't realize I was thinking this way, and then you read it and you're like, maybe I am thinking this way. And again, a lot of the hindrances to your weight loss journey is the mind part.
So much of it.
Yeah. So if you can't figure out what you're missing, or we're kind of this hot or cold, right? We'll do it for 2 weeks. We don't see anything. We give up. And then it's a wedding. We can do it for 4 weeks. And people are like, I lost 10 pounds in 4 weeks. I'm like, oh, amazing. But then I got to my weight. The wedding's over. I went back. These mindset things are kind of hardwired into our nature. And so like one of the first things is being able to swim against that nature. Books are really, really helpful at showing you how to do that.
Yeah, and that was my goal for this year too. I've always been a bad reader. I'll read a whole page and then realize that I have no idea what I just read.
Yeah,
because my mind will just wander and I won't retain anything. And so my goal for this year was to read books so that I can train my brain to focus on something for long enough to retain information, because our environment with the doom scrolling is just dopamine hit, 14-second video, 8-second video, 1 second sound clip, all of these memes. It's all just quick hits, and then we're looking for the next one. And so we've trained ourselves to have no attention span.
Right.
And so the counter to that is do things that require your attention. And for me, it's, reading books.
Yeah.
And I just finished book number 50 for the year.
Oh, that's awesome.
So my goal was 6. That's how bad it was. That's how bad it was.
That's amazing.
Well, what are you reading right now?
Right now, I'm reading Good Energy by Callie Means.
Okay.
So that's a really, really good one. There are some things and again, with all books, there are some things you agree with. There's some things you're like,
Sure.
I can see how that struggles. But, it's interesting. So this will be like a tag on. There was a study that they were mentioning from Hopkins, I think. And what they did was they kept 20 people in a hospital and they watched their food intake. And what they did was the first 20, they let them have unlimited processed foods. So these are your burgers, your hot dog buns, your chips, cookies, unlimited, whatever you want, right? So they did for 2 weeks. Then for 2 more weeks, they said you can have unlimited non-processed foods. So they had eggs and steak, and they had, vegetables and stuff like that. And what they found was at the end of the 2 weeks of the whole foods, most people on average naturally ate 500 calories less. Because like we shared before, there's so many things in whole foods that aren't in heavily processed foods, right?
Right.
And so that really made the messaging a lot easier. You're like, you know what? If we can just start eating more whole foods, the body actually knows what to do with those things and not like start freaking out and eating straight sugar and stuff.
Well, what's interesting is if you repeat that experiment, but put people in highly stressful situations, the same thing happens. People in response to uncontrollable stress will gravitate towards unhealthy foods and gain weight.
Yep.
But if you don't have those foods available, they don't overeat. They eat the right amounts. And, even though the stress isn't managed,
right.
They're not doing anything to control the stress. They're just changing what foods are available to them. And people that don't have the highly palatable processed foods available to them don't gain weight because their bodies just don't get that hungry because the processed foods just make you want more.
Yep.
That's what they're designed to do.
Yes, which is why I think it's not this one or the next one. Next episode, we'll talk about the environment. And the environment...
No, next one.
Not one. Okay.
It's coming.
We will have one about... Because that, again, talking about the willpower, one of the ways to make the willpower easy is to adjust the environment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like I said, like beginning of this episode, make it as easy as possible.
Yeah.
Limit the amount of willpower that you are forced to use so that when you do have to use it, you still have some left in the tank.
Dang, that's perfect. All right, Michael, any final thoughts you got for this episode?
No. Just let us know what you think. If you have any comments, post them in the comment section or send an email or whatever you need to do to get in touch with us. Let us know. And we're always looking for feedback and getting better. I look forward to the next few episodes.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about the next one. I've put a lot of work into that. I'm not done with the ones after that, but I know where they're going. They're going to be good.
That's right.
But yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Michael.
Not a problem.